So here's the deal. A year ago I said that if I were to do any other mods to my Focus ST, it has to be something functional. And I specifically mentioned an air diffuser to smooth out the air underneath. I might buy a rear diffuser. It's a diffuser that covers the entire underside of the car from the suspension all the way to exhaust tips. And you may ask, why bother with a rear diffuser on a street car? Well, it doesn't have to be a sports car or a race car for that matter, because the purpose of it is not to add more downforce, but to reduce lift and add more stability on highway cruise. That's why regular cars like Toyotas and Hondas are coming with them from factory. So I saved up some money and obviously looked into buying a Varus rear diffuser. And although it looked a little too aggressive for my taste, it was the only option on the market that actually covered the exhaust area and has been CFD designed. But guess what? I ordered it from 3 different sites that listed it as in stock and none of them really had it. I even spoke with someone on the phone to confirm they had it and they still ended up refunding me. So after much consideration, I decided that I'm going to build it myself. I am an engineer after all. And so I did some research to determine what material to use. I didn't have the tools to shape metal, so I decided to go with a popular option, which is ABS sheet.
It's finally here. That's a pretty good box actually. Oh, if anything, it should not be fragile.
It's strong and resistant to cracks and extended abuse, so I went to Lowe's and ordered a 24x48 sheet with a 1/4 inch thickness because I needed to cover a large area, so it had to be sturdy. One thing I forgot to mention is that before I bought the ABS sheet, I was searching on the internet what other diffuser options are for sale. And the only thing that caught my eye was this universal diffuser assembly on eBay for 70 bucks. So I bought it and ended up cutting it in pieces. And so I did some rough measurements. I started marking the areas that will need to be trimmed off.
These are gonna be the mounting points. Ideally, I'm gonna try to cover this entire area to have a smoother airflow through that. These look pretty good. This is gonna be one of my mounting points for the diffuser. And hopefully I'm gonna be able to cover this entire area, including here.
The idea was to mark points on one side so I can mirror them on the other side, all in relation to the middle of the long side of the sheet. I knew from the beginning that I wanted the diffuser to be as little intrusive as possible, so I made a cutout for the exhaust muffler as well. And after connecting all the dots, I went ahead and used a wood cutting saw to trim the pieces I needed gone. Now, that wasn't an easy process because the ABS sheet is dense and my saw would get stuck often. Using a standard cut-off saw was not an option either, because it works on higher RPMs and it rather melts the sheet instead of cutting it. Next thing were the brackets, and I needed them for 2 locations. First one was the rear subframe area, and I wanted something sturdy with plenty of surface, but it also had to be thin enough to allow an extra nut on top of the existing one. So I went back to Lowe's and found these small but sturdy brackets, and then enlarged them to fit the bigger bolt. And although I only had a few turns in, it was more than enough to give it more stability because the central bracket was the one to hold most of the weight anyway. The next step was to make the holes for diffuser strakes. As I mentioned earlier, I found them on eBay, so they turned out to have the right length. But because Focus ST comes with center exhaust, I had to cut them in individual pieces so I can mount them on each side of the muffler. thing was the main central bracket. And in case you're not aware, the Various diffuser comes with a specifically designed mounting bracket that uses the same bolt as the exhaust hanger. And what I initially did is design a similar bracket that I could 3D print, but things didn't work out as expected, so I had to take a different approach. I used the same type of brackets from Lowe's as I did for the subframe, but this time I connected them to a pair of splitter rods I found on Amazon.
Alright, here are the rods. Obviously I opened the box yesterday, but I just wanted to show you how it looks inside. So you got a nice sticker. You got some hardware. By the way, these bolts are pretty thick, so they do look definitely solid. Instructions on installation and maintenance, as it turns out. And here are the actual rods. They're made of 6061 aluminum. They are not all that heavy, but certainly look very solid. So that's pretty cool. They cost more, but I am actually happy that I paid a little bit more for them. They do look quality, and have full confidence in them, and they're the right length. So pretty good overall. We'll see how they're gonna handle it.
The next task was the actual installation, and I obviously did a few test mountings to make sure I have enough clearance by using nylon spacers and all the holes are in the right place. It's worth mentioning that the majority of stability came from the 6 bumper mounting points, 2 of which were the factory locations that were retrofitted for my application.
Alright, it's late, but I am very close to finish the installation. You can see the nylon spacers. That's pretty close though. We'll see. This thing is supposed to be very resistant to heat, so we'll see if it starts melting. I'm gonna lower it a little bit more. But as you can see, it's very, very solid, which I'm very happy about. And you see the rod. This is how it looks underneath. And this is the rod connected to that exhaust hanger. Okay, and it's right here. So again, it's very, very tight. As you can see, there's a lot of mounting points and the ones in the back. So this thing is solid and should stay solid at high speeds as well. So not afraid of that.
Also, it was important to make sure that the diffuser was properly leveled, so I used the rods to reduce or compensate its position. Now, last but not least, the diffuser shrakes installation. And I have to say that I drove around without them for a few weeks to see if I have any rattles and everything is in good shape. The actual installation was a little tricky though, because I had to make sure the shrakes are parallel to the car's side profile and I don't create any extra drag by installing them in the wrong way. So the best thing I could come up with is use my wheels alignment and measure against their position. The good news is that the correction was minimal because I used the sheet side width for alignment when I made the holes in the beginning.
Alright, so I'm gonna assume that my wheels are still properly aligned. They're still straight, so I had to take off the mud flap so I can attach this metal meter. I think that's how it's called. So I'm gonna align these strikes based off the wheel alignment. So that should help me make it properly aligned. But we'll see how is that gonna work.
So the big question is this thing really work and how do you test that? Well, there are a few things you can measure against. Number one, the fuel economy. I typically get about 25 miles per gallon in the city and that hasn't changed. In a combined cycle, things looked a bit different. I generally get around 30.5 mpg with the diffuser. I'm at around 32 mpg at a speed of 70-75 miles per hour on a highway, so I roughly got 1 to 2 mpg improvement on a 300-mile stretch. Is there any wind noise reduction on the highway? Well, not really, or at least not by a huge margin. When you are in the driver's seat, you mostly hear the wind noise coming from the mirror caps. Is the car more stable on the highway? It's hard to tell the difference without a thorough research, so I'd say no. Actually, my ST had the full diffuser installed when I did the mountain run in October, and the car had lots of grip, but I can't say if much of it came from diffuser or just from the tires and LSD. So in the end, there are some improvements from having the cars belly covered. In fact, the 1 to 2 mpg improvement came from running the diffuser without the strakes. So although it looked nicer with them, I took them off. Plus, I have a steep driveway, so I was scratching the asphalt as well. And although my results are not that significant, I will continue to cover as much area as safely possible to squeeze more mpg and potentially reduce lift even more. And the best part is that it doesn't have to be perfect, and it definitely adds more benefit than an aftermarket wing, especially if you mainly do street driving. Thanks for watching.